Hi guys, Kim here, and I wanted to share a recipe with you guys. I've done this recipe several times and we really enjoy it. It is always a pleaser, and I'm actually making this for a party that I'm going to tomorrow. So I wanted to share this with you guys. It is carnitas in the crock pot. These are really good, really flavorful, tasty. What you'll do is you'll cook the meat in the crock pot and then you'll finish it off in the oven to give it that really crispy, top layer, so that carnitas are really made by frying it in pig fat. So we're not going to be frying it in anything, but we're going to roast it off in the oven at the end, and it's going to come out really good and really tasty and really flavorful. So you're going to start off with a pork roast. This is a pork shoulder roast. This one actually has a bone in it, and that's okay. You can get it with the bone or without, whatever you prefer, but this has a bone in it. This is about 4 pounds. This is 4.7 pounds. Anywhere between 3.5 to 4.5 pounds is fine. This is a little bit larger, but that's okay. It'll fit perfectly fine in my crock pot. What you'll want to do with your pork is trim the fat if you need to. This one happens to have a large piece of fat here, so I am going to be trimming it slightly. You're going to want to keep some of the fat in there because you want it to cook in the fat as the fat melts in the crock pot. It's going to give it a lot of flavor, going to make it taste really, really good. Okay, so here are the ingredients that you're going to need for the carnitas. And what you're going to want to do is make a rub, and it's going to look like this when it's all finished. You're going to start off with a teaspoon of ground cumin, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of salt, and we're also going to be adding in chicken broth, and if you have a low sodium chicken broth, you're going to want to do like a teaspoon and a quarter. Okay, and then you're going to come into these. You're going to need a half a teaspoon of oregano, and this you're going to want to kind of crush it a little bit so that it's not big oregano leaves. It'll make just the flavor taste a little bit nicer and a little bit smoother. So make sure that you crush the leaves, and you're going to also want to use coriander, half a teaspoon as well. And right here I have coriander seeds, but you're actually going to want coriander powder. So you can make that by just grinding some of these seeds and just get half a teaspoon of that. And then I like to add in half a teaspoon of ground cayenne or red pepper. I just feel like it gives it a little bit of more flavor. It gives it a little bit more warmth. So I really like that. Okay, then like I said, you're also going to need a can of chicken broth. That's all the things that you're going to need to make this carnitas. I'm going to go ahead and trim the pork, and then once you do that, you're going to put this rub all over the pork and place that into the crock pot with the fat side down. Alright, and I'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. Okay, so here is the pork. It's all trimmed up and it has the spice rub all over it. We went ahead and put it fat side down, and I've also already added the can of chicken broth. Okay, when you're cooking in the crock pot, you don't necessarily need to cover the meat all the way up with liquid. It'll cook just fine with a small amount of liquid in there. And as this cooks, the fat's going to render out and it's going to create more liquid. So don't worry about it looking like maybe it's not a lot of liquid. This is plenty. I'll go ahead and I'll see if I can show you. It's just a couple inches of liquid in there, but it'll cook just fine. So this is going to go ahead and cook for anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. If you have a shorter amount of time, it should be fine. You just want to make sure that it is fork tender so that when you pull it out, it should fall off the bone. It should be really easy to shred. And there's one last step with this. You're going to stick it in the oven afterwards, and I will show you what that looks like in a bit, 10 hours from now. But basically you're just going to let it sit and then let it do its thing. This is a really easy recipe because it just all it requires is that you mix up the spices and put them in, and it just cooks itself. So really simple recipe, but really delicious. Alright, I will see you back in a little bit. when we put this in the oven. Okay, so here is the pork after it's been cooking for 10 hours. You're going to want to flip this halfway through. So I don't think I mentioned that earlier in the video, but you're going to want to flip it halfway through so that the part that was on top with the seasonings gets a chance to sit in the broth for a little bit as well. Then the next thing you're going to do is take the pork and shred it. I like to pull out some of the fattier pieces and stuff because I don't like that in my meat. And I place it into a roasting pan like this. Any pan that you have will do. And then I'll show you what that looks like as well. But you're going to put this whole thing along with all of the liquid that's in the crock pot into the oven at 450 degrees until most of the liquid has evaporated, and that's really going to give it the good flavor. If you just pull out the pork now and serve it like that, it'll just kind of taste like shredded pork, but putting it in the oven, roasting it off like that, really intensifies the flavor and gives it that authentic carnitas flavor. Here is the pork. We've pulled it out and shredded it. It's not completely shredded. There's still some chunks in there. You want to keep it a little bit together. And we placed all of the liquid into the roasting pan. And this is going to go in the oven at 450 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes, just so that enough of the liquid is evaporated and you have that flavor throughout the meat. Alright, this is after 20 minutes in the oven at 450 degrees. This is what it should look like. This actually could be in there for maybe another 5 minutes. I'm going to stop it here because we're going to take this somewhere else and we're going to have to reheat this, but this is what it should look like. The top should be a little bit golden in some places. You should still be able to see some liquid. You don't want this to dry out, and this is ready to serve. So I hope that you guys enjoy this recipe. I hope that you try it out. If you do, please leave a comment down below. Let me know how you liked it, and thanks so much for watching. God bless.